Well, hello, Faydra, Dr. Shapiro. Hi, everybody in the Philos Catholic family. I'm so happy to be talking to Faydra. Faydra, welcome.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Simone.
Faydra, I'm acting like I'm interviewing you for the Beyond Rome podcast, but we haven't done that yet. But I wanted to record this video and talk to you because you were just in Lublin at the John Paul John Paul II Catholic University in Lublin. And in light of like what's been going on in the world right now in Amsterdam, in Colombia, in DC, there's a kosher restaurant that was just damaged on the anniversary of Kristallnacht. Like all these things that have been happening that are really negative. You wrote a blog post called Array of Hope, and also just working with you at Philos Catholic and Jewish Catholic relations. Jewish Catholic relations is your whole world. That's your life. So
Absolutely.
I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit about what that experience was like in Lublin.
This was a 3-day conference sponsored by the Heschel Center for Catholic Jewish Relations at the Catholic University of Lublin. And the topic was peace in the Holy Land. It brought together Catholics and Protestants and Jews and Israelis and people from different countries in Europe and Americans. So it was a large group of speakers, biblical scholars, theologians. So quite a mix. And all of a sudden, as I was on my way to Lublin from the airport, it occurred to me like, my gosh, I'm speaking as an Israeli, with kids in the IDF, and I'm going to a university campus, and I'm of course, very keenly aware of what's happening on university campuses across Western Europe and North America. And I thought, wow, what are the security arrangements going to be? And the organizer said to me, "Oh, we don't have any security arrangements."
Great.
How's this going to play out? Okay. You seem very calm. I'm not a worrier by nature, so I was definitely sort of on the alert for how this was all going to happen, and nothing happened. Like absolutely nothing. No
Amazing.
demonstrations. No fuss was kicked up. No cancel culture. No, I mean, there were definitely hard questions from the students, from the audience,
Right.
challenging questions, intelligent questions, but there was nothing, no silencing going on. And for
Wow.
me, especially coming home to the
Hmm.
news of Amsterdam and the riots there and the violence against Jews, and this was, on the eve of Kristallnacht. And to
Right.
me, it was very obviously time for me to recognize that what had happened in Lublin was really not something to be taken for granted, that was actually something special, that was worthy of note.
Amazing. And the concept of Jewish Catholic relations can be kind of controversial in and of itself for various reasons and understandings, but it seems to be like that you embody so much of what Jewish Catholic relations means, being an Orthodox Jewish woman with a life with all of us Catholics, at least at least here at Philos Catholic, but I know in other outlets as well. But why do you think that was the case in Lublin? Why Lublin?
I'm not sure. I really don't know if it was particular to Lublin. I think that some of it, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think that some of
Yeah.
it is really like the culture that's created. First of all, by the Heschel Center itself for Catholic Jewish
Mm,
Relations, that is really focused on this, multi faith
right.
dialogue and creating a space in which that can happen safely, so that we can talk about. I mean, people were there from very diverse perspectives, but the recognition is, there is no Jewish Catholic conversation without talking about hard things. So that
Yeah.
commitment to building that environment, and also the environment and the culture at the Catholic University of Lublin, is one that clearly puts a very high value on academic freedom and civil, even if challenging, uh,
Right.
discussion. And I just thought that's the best of academia. That's what academia is supposed to be able
Supposed to
to
be.
offer. And it's
Yeah, I think
no longer possible in North America and places in Western Europe, it seems.
I'd like to see what happened at John Paul II, Catholic University in Lublin, happen more in the West on Catholic universities, especially because in just, the Ivy Leagues and whatnot. I mean, what happened in Colombia was like students on Veterans Day, like praising the quote unquote like martyrs of Hamas, which is just wild. And petrifying. And so it's up to, like, I think Catholic schools in particular to counter that by having the kind of dialogue that you're talking about. I think sometimes when people hear Jewish Catholic relations, they're thinking like or like a reduced like kind of sentimentality, like a kumbaya vibe. But you're saying that's not what happened. I mean, there's always going to be tension in Jewish Catholic relations as we kind of have more serious conversations, but that's not a threat to quote actual friendship. Where did you see that in
You're
Lublin?
absolutely right. I mean, disagreement is essential to Jewish Catholic relations. It's like built into its very fabric. This was all about, all the things that we have in common. And look, we're so similar. I mean, there are
Right.
people that do that, but not in the sort of serious academic sphere. So disagreement is part of it. And whether that's political or cultural or theological, it is to be expected. And the challenge is learning how to disagree well, learning how to disagree safely, learning that disagreement doesn't mean breaking off relations. It means, wow, we need to work even harder. We need to talk more. We need to figure out how to live with the things that we disagree about. And so this was like
Right.
just a wonderful example of that.
That's awesome. Well, I just wanted to make this short video to highlight this ray of hope that you're talking about amidst all this kind of negative news that we're getting that's so depressing. But tell me a little bit if you can about about your presentation, because I think that's something that can be take a lot of courage to speak about. So if you want to share about that, I'd love if you share that with our
Right.
audience.
Well, I guess, I mean, talking about your sort of point about sentimentality, the topic of the conference was peace in the Holy Land, and looking at different aspects of that, scriptural, eschatological, from different perspectives. And I'm completely unsentimental. So I actually gave a paper about, why praying for peace, and are we actually praying for the right thing? I was
Hmm.
motivated by this question, and frankly my own response of irritation, increasing irritation, when I heard especially Catholics whose response to the war was, one of fasting and praying for peace. And I just heard this over and over and over again. Of course, Pope Francis, on the 1 year anniversary of October 7th, declared it a day of prayer and fasting for peace. And I'm like, why is this irritating me? And I realized
Right.
there's like a disconnect between Catholic discourse about the war and at least Jewish Israeli discourse about the right response to the war, because Jews are not praying for peace. And I
Mm.
just sort of examined, so what are Jews praying for? I didn't actually use any Catholic sources. I wanted to sort of dig into the Jewish side. Um, what are we praying for? Why does praying for peace feel to Jews like a complete kind of miscommunication? Why is this
Right.
a space of breaking down? So I just suggested some of the problems of this sort of emphasis on praying for, a kind of vague and hazy idea of peace, theological issues, and then
Right.
some suggestions maybe about what might be better things to pray for in light of the war, which takes a certain like audacity. Like there's some chutzpah in telling people what to pray for.
Hmm.
But I chanced
Hmm.
it. So
Yeah,
um,
I think it's important to like decouple. because there's, like you said, there's like this reason why it was so triggering to hear like Pope Francis calling for, prayer and fasting on 10/7, whereas a Catholic would hear them be like, oh, that's great. That's like the best use of our time, and wouldn't be as triggered. But I am half triggered as someone, as someone, because I definitely think there's like nothing more efficacious than like prayer and fasting for our intentions. But it's a misunderstanding where the trigger comes in. It's a misunderstanding of, there's like peace, which is just a false peace, and then true peace, which is grounded in the truth. And that if prayer is doing its thing, it's actually, like Mother Teresa said, doesn't change anything. It changes you, who then goes out and fights for justice, which sometimes means doing things that don't seem very peaceful, And Jesus himself kind of says that when he says, I've not come to bring peace, but the sword. Well, how can you say that about, we claim that he's the Prince of Peace, but then he says that very controversial thing. Well, he was Jewish, so he wasn't sentimental about peace. So I think if I can so boldly speak on behalf of Jesus, that he would agree with you, Phaedra, that,
Wow,
we
that's
don't
quite the
want,
endorsement, Simone.
I mean, I always tell people stop talking on behalf of God and Jesus, but here I am doing it. But I'm just quoting our scriptures on that. But that's something that my sister talks about as well. She's a trauma therapist, and when she gets called in to speak about peace, they think they're going to get kind of a sentimental talk. And what they actually get is kind of going to war, because you can't have true peace if you don't go to war with yourself and your inner demons and bring truth out in your relationships, which is going to actually bring out actually a lot of conflict. So, anyways, those are just some of my brief thoughts on it. But I think that's a conversation that is so worth having. And I think now, hearing you speak about it, I realize now when things go wrong in American culture, a lot of people on social media will post like, like with shootings and stuff, which are horrific, and everybody goes, I'm praying for, sending thoughts and prayers. And so many of my friends who are secular will say, I don't want your thoughts and prayers, I want action, because Christians, unfortunately, have given off the image that prayer is something that's passive and not something that's active, and something that's grounded in reality. So, anyways, we could keep talking about it, but we'll hopefully this will provoke some good conversation among our listeners. So, any final thoughts, Phaedra? Thanks again for doing this last minute.
Wow, final thoughts. One of the many casualties of the war has been, sometimes explicit, sometimes quiet, academic boycott of Israel and Israelis. And the losses there, I mean, the academy, and as a place of disagreement, as a place where contesting views and research-based opinions can be brought out. I mean, this is really kind of should be an island of sanity in an increasingly complex and kind of mad world,
Yeah.
and to not allow that channel to function because of certain political opinions about people from a certain country. I mean, that's just, you know, um, it's knee jerk, and it's
Yeah.
also something that can have really devastating consequences in the long run if we can't educate the future generation to become critical thinkers and to share, disagreement and diversity of opinions. Then, how is our culture, how is Western culture going to flourish? So I think that, it's really important for us to be able to hold onto the examples where that is still possible and try to hold that out, as a kind of beacon of hope for the universities and the academic spaces that are dimming. It's a terrifying thing.
It is terrifying, and social media is not helping because it is perpetuating that culture of urgency and indoctrination. Everybody needs to slow down to do academic work, to have the kind of conversations and seeking truth together kind of culture that the universities are supposed to be, but have long since abandoned. So I couldn't agree with you more. Great final thought. Thank you, Phaedra. We'll pray for that, shall we?
Second.
we'll
I'm with
pray
you.
for that.
Thanks, Simone.
Thanks so much.